And you're
Good
live.
morning, Summa scholars. Welcome to the Daily Summa. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, the fifth week of Lent. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Now, some of you watching may be wondering, wait a minute, why are you talking to Joe through the earbuds, and what is this background? Well, we got to the place of filming, and there was no Wi-Fi. So I tried part two. The seat actually reclines. I decided to go because, as you know, as you H-Town folks know from Sideshow Tramps, the show must go on. And I'm going to see if I can get my head in front of this light so that it's a little bit better. Maybe give me a little halo. As you all Sideshow Tramps fans know who watch on Facebook, even if the electricity goes out like it did in Austin that time, when we knocked out the electricity in the Continental Club in Austin, we took the people out on the street and played acoustic. The show must go on. We had no Wi-Fi. I tried to drive in front of a coffee shop, but some person not sympathetic with St. Thomas apparently had already parked in the spot closest to the coffee shop, so I couldn't get strong enough Wi-Fi. So then I drove back over to the place where I'm house sitting to use their Wi-Fi, and Joe's good enough to rendezvous here through technology over at his house. How's it going this morning, Joe? Just another wonderful,
could be better.
sparkling, shiny day for you?
Could be better. Could be better.
Another sparkling day in this valley of tears. Joe, you've already heard the story, but I might as well tell it to everyone who doesn't know about what I referenced in knocking the electricity out in the Continental Club in Austin. So I'm trying to think of any of the people who normally watch in Houston were at that show. I don't think you guys were, but you might have heard the story. We were playing our first ever show in the Continental Club in Austin. I had come out of a monastery, never played in bands before, and so I didn't understand that Austin was a big deal. And all the guys were telling me this is like one of the premier clubs in Austin, and Austin's a big music city, at least 20 years ago or whatever it was when we played this gig. And I've heard that Austin has fallen on woke times, and so it's become boring. But anyway, the guys were excited to play, and it was supposed to be a big deal. That's the setup. The setup is this is an important show. And we played the show, and if you've never seen Sideshow Tramps, you don't know what our show was like, but it was chaotic and crazy and wild. And at one point in the show, Joffrey kicks over a bunch of guitars that we had laying against the wall for no reason except for fun. And he kicks the guitars, and they go flying over. And one of the guitars had a broken E string, the smallest string on the guitar. And by God's beautiful divine providence, because the Lord loves to have fun, that E string went into an electrical socket that was up on stage. The E string, the guitar falls over, and the E string just happens to go right into the electrical socket, and sparks fly over the stage. It's like a Kiss concert all of a sudden, and all the electricity goes out. You can't hear the electric guitars. You can't hear my voice. All you can hear is Shane's drums going mad. And everyone stops. The whole crowd doesn't know what it's doing. The bartender is there in the dark. And of course, we start laughing. And I said something like, "Grab your snare drum, coach." And we all jumped off the stage with our acoustic instruments into the middle of the crowd and just start playing some like bluegrass and stuff. I think Scott had his mandolin, Joff grabbed his banjo, I had the guitar, of course. Shane comes out with his snare drum and is playing. He probably had some other weird stuff too, as he always did, and maybe even a bottle of Jägermeister in his pocket that he's hitting off of while he's playing it with his nose or something. Who knows with Shane? And so we're playing there in the middle of the crowd. Everyone's, of course, loving it. And then we decide to march them out. I'm telling you how we got kicked out of the Continental Club. This made it to where they asked us to never come back. And I was glad to comply with that request. But we decided to march them back to the back of the venue, like back into the private area, and then out a back door. and outside onto the street, and we marched him around and then eventually brought him back into the front door and kept playing. What we didn't know is that there was some kind of law where you can't have alcohol on the street. And all these fans, well, they weren't really fans. It was our first time to play there, but all these people in the Continental Club who were seeing us for the first time and who had followed us out on the street had beer and stuff in their hands, drinks. So anyway, the Continental Club told us to never come back. We knocked out their electricity. We brought people out on the street with alcohol. They could have lost their license. Okay, I understand. At that point, we didn't care. We just didn't care. It was all about the show, which is what I'm saying here with this live Summa thing. The spirit of that goes on. It has to. How can it not? I mean, Sideshow Tramps. Any of the Sideshow Tramps, Joffrey's still playing, any of the Sideshow Tramps who are doing things out in the world are still going to be that way. It's just the way we are. It's just the way the guys were. And so, but here's the cool thing. Even though we got kicked out of the Continental Club and told to never come back and never did go back, although we played Austin many times again, never played there. The cool thing was, though, the sound guy and the bartender came up to us and said, that's one of the best shows we've ever seen. That was like new and original. And the sound guy gave me a pick, like a bass guitar pick that he had kept for years, I guess. And this pick was thrown off the stage by Lemmy of Motorhead. And the sound guy had kept it. And Lemmy was playing the Ace of Spades, and he threw his pick off, and the sound guy caught it and kept it. And he loved the show so much and the excitement. He talked about how boring it is after a while playing sound with band after band of shoegazing musicians who sit up there and yank off on stage in front of people and don't really put on a show. And then he got to have fun finally, so he gave me this pick from Lemmy of Motorhead, which is really, really cool. So anyway, that is the spirit that the show must go on. So we tried to do it in front of the coffee shop, which would have been really cool because I would have been in my Honda Element. Like the other YouTube videos, you can go look and see Craig Kinsey in his Element. I did a few videos from my Honda Element. We would have been able to revisit that. That would have been fun, but the Wi-Fi didn't work. So here we are with this beautiful backdrop. We have the Lord Jesus. We have his mother. We have the Holy Face. We have little Therese. We have some cool stuff. There's also a cat running around this place. So a cat may jump up on my lap at any moment. But that's the story. What do you think of that story, Joe? Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that an inspirational story for your Wednesday morning?
So beautiful, so inspirational. I'm floored, honestly, by its
Inspiration?
intense lows and highs and
yeah. Yeah. It had the full arc, the full necessary arc.
Yeah.
Speaking of lows and highs,
well, it's a real 3-act thing going on. Yeah.
Totally. If you knew what happened with some of the ladies after the show, you'd have a 5-act play. Just kidding. Okay, so this morning, here's another thing that messed up beautifully. We love mess ups around here at the Daily Summa. We love the darkness. We love the confusion. That's where the treasure lies. But this morning, I'm doing my morning prayer and study, preparing for this class and all that stuff. I look out the window, and there's a deer that had come up from the graveyard into Elias's yard here. And I'm like, ooh, that would make a cool, quick little locals video. So I grab my iPad and I start trying to do the locals thing. I'm just going to do but they make you put a title on it and a description. You have to do that or it won't press go live. So I'm like, okay, I just write deer for the title and then wow, and then for the description and let's go. But it won't let me in yet. It won't let me go live. And I'm like, why? Why is this thing not working? I'm like poking it. Why is it not going? And then I think maybe the title's not long enough. I don't know why that thought came to my head, but I thought maybe the title's not long enough. So I put in dear now. And with those extra letters, boop, the go live button came on. So locals must think that a 4-letter word is not sufficient for a title. I don't know who made that decision. Okay, guys, let's make it to where it has to be this certain amount of letters. But anyway, by the time I did all that stuff, do you want to guess what happened, Joe? You're right. The deer was gone. So absolutely.
Sorry, I was muted. I said I guess that you exploded. That's what my guess was.
The deer exploded. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that didn't work out either. But you know what is going to work out? Question 13, Article 12. Now, Joe, are you going to have to leave us at some point during this
Pretty
festivities?
soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else, anything you have to share for today?
Today's great. I love today. Today's being very kind to me.
Oh, Joe, what a gift God has given me in this friendship. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I have nothing good to say right now, so I'm just gonna shove it over to you, my friend.
That's
I'm not
okay.
happy right now.
I had an amazing conversation last night with some fellas who are, I guess, Franciscan students at the college here, and really good conversation. One of the guys, though, is not a student. One of the guys was Harrison, who's an awesome guitar player.
Wait, Harrison's a student, isn't he?
He used to be. I don't think he is anymore.
Oh.
I might be wrong. I could be wrong.
Probably.
I think he left and came back or something. I don't know. Whatever. Great conversation. A priest was there, and Gage was there with the guys. But I was going to share something of that conversation today, but since we don't have the live class in front of people and everything, I'll save it for later. But I shared with them, this is a preview of coming attractions, folks. I shared with them my thoughts on the cleansing of Cana. When God commanded Israel to enter into Cana, the promised land, and slay every man, woman, and child. That's a point of great contention among atheists and even among Christians. Everybody's like, wait, what's going on? I thought God was a nice guy. Why is he telling everybody to kill women and children? You know, and I have some ideas on it that I've never heard anyone say. And I told it to these theology students, and they were like, wow, I've never heard that. And I was like, yeah, but if you say it online, make sure you say Craig Kinsey of the Daily Summa on YouTube said it. So that people will come and watch this YouTube channel, and we can get cheese on my Whataburgers and get diapers on your baby's butts, Joe. That's the whole thing we're trying to do here, guys. We can't do this forever. We got to have cochingos to keep this going. It's too much time, too much effort. Joe's got to work. We got to get some cochingos in. We're giving it a certain amount of time to see if God smiles on it. And if not, then we scoot on down the road. Just like if he kicks us out of this Continental Club, doesn't give us the dinero, we're going to go to the next show. But so what I'm thinking is, since one of these guys has a YouTube channel and talks on YouTube a lot, and he'll probably end up saying this thing because it's interesting, very interesting, and no one's ever like brought about this way of looking at it because it has to do with Jewish tradition and halakha and Gemara. So if he says it, I don't want him to misrepresent it because it takes a lot of background knowledge. Not that he would purposefully represent it, but it takes a lot of background knowledge, and he might say it mixed up and stuff. And so anyway, I think I'm just going to say it on this, and maybe we can turn that into a short, Joe, about the real answer to the cleansing of Cana, or cleansing of Cana you don't understand, or something, whatever, some title to make people look at it. And try to do that tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow to see what is going on with the cleansing of Cana. Why did God do that? Get some answers. But for now, the only answers we're going to be interested in is whether affirmative propositions can be formed of God. Remember, that's the last article on this question 13. Tomorrow, we're moving smartly into question 14. Kat, that was not me raising my voice, was not me calling you. Let's see if you can see its tail go through the visual. She's walking right in front. No, can't see it. That would have been entertaining. All right, folks, let's do this. Just for fun, we will take up the very top of the page, which we already said yesterday, but we'll say the whole page. At the top, it says, that they be imposed from some perfections flowing from God to creatures. Among these, the first is existence, from which comes this name, he who is. Remember, guys, I'm petting the cat. Remember, guys, he who is. Eheya. That was the question from yesterday. By the way, if you're tuning in for the first time today, the way we do it on this Beaver Galleon, you watched today's show. Be on the ship with us, sailing through the abyss. And then if you want to see more of it, go back and start over and binge watch it or whatever from the beginning. But always watch that day's show so that you're with us. What are you doing, cat? This cat's a big Thomas Aquinas fan. A lot of people don't know that. Article 12, let's go through the objections real quick, and then we'll get to the, I want to jerk this cat's tail. Don't worry, Mike Elias, I'm not going to jerk your cat's tail. Don't worry, Leah. Your cat loves me. Objection 1, coming from Larry the Beaver. By the way, one of the last days, Joe, when I was at the property that I was just at, I was walking. This is like a few days ago, 3 or 4 days ago. I was walking past the pond, and I see it out in the pond. Like that little monster that came up from the water in the trash compactor on Star Wars Episode 4. I see it moving through the waters, and I know what it is. It's a beaver. There's a beaver going through the waters, and as I walk around the pond, he sees me, and you see his tail, and he goes, bloop, that beaver tail, bloop, he goes under, takes off, hides. Little beaver sighting. Always exciting. Beaver sighting, always exciting. Objection 1 from Larry the Beaver. It seems that affirmative propositions cannot be formed about God. For Dionysius says that negations about God are true, but affirmations are vague. We've already kind of heard this, apophatic theology. Thomas is going to deal with it. Let's move. Ralph says, further, Boethius says that a simple form cannot be a subject. Now, I have it written down in my notes to ask Dr. Rebard what that means. A simple form cannot be a subject. I think what he means is if you take a monad, 1, there can be no predicate. Because if 1 is 1, it's only 1. That's what I'm guessing. We'll see what Rebard says. But there's an old philosophical problem going all the way back to Athens, talking about the monad. There can never be 1, nor can you speak of 1. Why? Because as soon as you speak of 1, it's you speaking of 1. And that's 2. One of the paradoxes in Athens. There cannot be a monad, there cannot be a 1. If something is completely simple, then it is 1. And you cannot talk about it because it turns into 2. As soon as it's a subject, then that means there's a predicate, and the predicate is the 2. Perhaps that's what Boethius is getting at. And it's very interesting. This is also a problem in Judaism, although there's other discussions about it, about the faces of God, the panim, that there's Trinitarian conversation and duality conversation in Judaism, but it's kind of on the down low, not because they're keeping it secret, but just because most people don't know, and they're really wanting to stress the Adonai Echad, that God is one. But there's a problem when you just have a monad. Anyway, that's going into too deep teaching, but let's just move on. But God is the most absolutely simple form, as shown in question 3. Therefore, he cannot be a subject. But everything about which an affirmative proposition is made is taken as a subject. Therefore, an affirmative proposition cannot be formed about God. That's what I just said. If you have a 2, if you have something talking about it, it's now 2 and not simple. Objection 3, coming from Shimon. Further, every intellect is false, which understands a thing otherwise than it is. Now, this sounds like a simple setup, and this is quite humorous, actually, taking everything in regards to our world today. Thomas always sets things up with a very simple and obvious statement. But the beauty is, once you leave reality, once you leave Malchus and go flying off into Keter and potentiality without any actuality, then you get what we have today in society. So the question, the statement is no longer quite so obvious. Listen to the statement. Further, every intellect is false, which understands a thing otherwise than it is. Well, you're going to say, well, of course, that's what false means. It means you're saying something that is not. But what do we have today? We have people separated from Malchus, which is the visible kingdom, sight, taste, smell, senses, which is the basis of scientific inquiry. So now you have people who say, I don't care what the science says. Someone may be biologically a male, but I say they're female. So you have to see the comedy of this when Thomas says further, and he's saying this is like a foregone conclusion. Further, every intellect is false, which understands a thing otherwise than it is. But yeah, Thomas, and that's exactly what everyone's doing now in the postmodern crazy world of woke. Everything is false if you say it otherwise than it is. And when we say is, you have to ask now. There's a greater clarification coming to us. Actually, the woke thing and the postmodernists, it's helping us, actually. Just as everywhere in Scripture you see when the enemies come against Israel, they're actually helping Israel. Every time the enemy, old slewfoot, old devil, tries to do something bad, it always is flipped. It's actually helpful. And these questions and this woke thing are bringing to light this reality. That's why you're having so many atheists and theists teaming up, because they're the atheists, even though they're atheists, they still are cleaving to science and matter not being, you can't do science if you don't have a right view of what's in front of you scientifically in matter. You can't just break from that and say, no, I'm going to say that that's not what it is. So that's why atheists and theists are teaming up against woke. And it's a beautiful and humorous thing. Humorous until people die, and people have died and will die, unfortunately. On the contrary, here's the argument from authority. What is of faith cannot be false, but some affirmative propositions are of faith, as that God is three in one and that he is omnipotent. Therefore, true affirmative propositions can be formed about God. Now, if you're just watching this, you're a skeptic, you're thinking, that's no answer. He's just saying because the Bible says so. Yes, because the sed contra part of the Summa is an argument from authority, which Thomas and everyone knows is the weakest form of argument. He's just setting up the argument with an argument from authority, and now he's going to go to the respondio, the I answer that, and give the rational argument. But first, I do want to say something about the three in one, as that God is three in one. Actually, I'm going to skip that. I don't know how much time we already have. Joe, are you still with us? Joe, are you still? Joe, Earth to Joe. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? I think Major Tom has put his something's on and put his whatever on. Can't remember the lyrics of it. Sorry, Bowie. So we'll just carry on without Joe in the command central with us. Actually, I would be the one in the ship, and Joe would be the one at the in the NASA, whatever. I answer that. Let's see what Thomas says. True affirmative propositions can be formed about God. To prove this, we must know that in every true affirmative proposition, the predicate and the subject signify in some way the same thing in reality and different things in idea. I'll go ahead and read further and then explain what he's saying. But it's reflecting back of what I had said earlier about subject and predicate. And we're also going to bring up the idea of reality and idea. Reality being Malchus. And Thomas also affirms that ideas are also a kind of reality, but we're making distinctions. And this appears to be the case both in propositions which have an accidental predicate and in those which have an essential predicate. For it is manifest that man and and whiteness are the same in subject and different in idea. For the idea of man is one thing, and the idea of whiteness is another thing. The same applies when I say man is an animal, since the same thing which is man is truly animal, for in the same suppositum, that's an individual expression of a form or nature, there is sensible nature, by reason of which he is called animal. Sensible nature means our senses, we're animals. And rational nature, by reason of which he is called man. So there's two different parts of man. There's the body, which we are like the animals in, and then there's our rational nature, which is looking at the world through this body. Hence, here again, predicate and subject are the same as to the suppositum, the individual man, like Craig, but different as far as idea. I am one man, but you can separate me through the idea of animal and rational. All right, but in propositions where one same thing is predicated of itself, the same rule in some way applies, and as much as the intellect draws to the suppositum what is placed in the subject, and what it places in the predicate, it draws to the nature of the form existing in the suppositum, according to the saying that predicates are to be taken formally and subjects materially. All right, I guess we can stop there because I want to explain what that means, which will clarify the rest of it at the bottom of the page. Let's say you talk about ebony and ivory. Ebony and ivory. So we know that the old keys of a piano used to be made of ebony and ivory. Ivory is white, so we have the concept of whiteness. Ebony, black. We have the concept of blackness. Ebony is, though, a material. Ivory is a material. That material is carved into a form or a shape, meaning the white keys have a certain form and the black keys have a certain form. So the subject, if I say the C on the piano keyboard, if I say middle C, that middle C key is an actual material thing. That's the subject because I'm saying, look at this key, middle C. I'm pointing to a subject. The subject that I'm pointing to is middle C, this particular key. But predicates are taken formally. What is the form? I can talk about that subject, the middle C, in numerous ways, numerous forms. What do you mean, Craig? Well, it's middle C, the subject I'm talking about, but I can talk about its whiteness. Or I can talk about its being a key. Or I can talk about the form or I can talk about its weight, how much it weighs. So this one subject, I can take different forms that constitute it and talk about them as an idea. I can talk about blackness as far as the ebony keys. So the subject is one thing. It's one suppositum. But that one subject can be spoken about. I can predicate upon that subject numerous forms or aspects. Whiteness of the key, weight of the key, length of the key. And I'm sure there's numerous other ways I could talk about that key from different artisans' perspective. The guy who carved it probably has numerous ways of talking about it, but it's one subject, key. Same thing for man. I am one person, Craig, but you can talk about me as animal, rational, my weight, etc. So a subject is a material, and the predicate, you can speak about it formally, about its form. To this diversity in idea corresponds the plurality of predicate and subject, while the intellect signifies the identity of the thing by the composition itself. It's the thing I talked about before about walking out into the yard and seeing a pear tree. Your mind says pear tree. First, though, it sees being, then it sees the singularity, pear tree, and then it can think about the numerous forms that compose the pear tree, like leaves, branches, pears, seeds, etc. God, however, as considered in himself, is altogether one and simple. Oh, okay, well then how are we going to solve this, Thomas? Yet our intellect knows him by different conceptions because it cannot see him as he is in himself. Nevertheless, Although it understands him under different conceptions, it knows that one and the same simple object corresponds to these conceptions. So when we have different words about God, God has gifted us with an intellect enough to know that even though I'm talking about different things, those things start trained on and pointing to one subject, and that is what we commonly refer to as God. Therefore, the plurality of predicate and subject represents the plurality of idea, and the intellect represents the unity of composition. That's beautiful. Our intellect is able to take numerous things and see them as one. That's a gift our intellect can do. Why? Because our intellect has been created to eventually see the divine vision. It's all aiming at a consummation of a love relationship. But first, we must be wooed back and voluntarily love the beloved. That's the only way love works, is if it's voluntary. Reply to objection 1. He's going to break this down in like a fraction, as Bernie Mac would say. Reply to Larry. Dionysius says that the affirmations about God are vague, or according to another translation, incongruous, inasmuch as no name can be applied to God according to its mode of signification. He's just saying what we've already said. You can't have a word or a name that talks about the exact essence of God because it's beyond our comprehension. But we can have names that signify it. And that's very important so that we don't fall into Gnosticism, or we don't fall into pantheism, or we don't fall into saying that deism and saying that there's no way to even get close to or approach God. He's too far from us. So just live your human life and don't worry about God. Do you like this teaching so far, Mochi? Are you enjoying this teaching? Kind of. Reply to objection 2. Our intellect cannot comprehend simple subsisting forms as they really are in themselves, even on earth. But it apprehends them as compound things in which there is something taken as subject and something taken as inherent. Therefore, it apprehends the simple form as a subject and attributes something else to it. This is what we've already said. You see the key, even though, or the pear tree, it has numerous things, but we see it as one thing, pear tree. Also, I spoke earlier about that dream I had years ago in which I was talking to my friend Randy, and I was rejoicing in the dream to speak to him. And we were having very intimate, great conversation. And then in the dream, I started backing up away from him. You know how you can be pulled out of a dream and you're not doing it? You're just like, oh, or you want to go back into the dream and you can't. You're being pulled out of it. That's God, by the way. I know some of you might not believe that, but what else is it going to be? So I was being pulled away from my friend. And then in the dream, I exited his chest and then started seeing his body. Here's Randy's body. I'm talking to him. And then I got pulled out of his chest and saw his body. And I could see his face and his body in front of me. But in the dream, I realized I couldn't see him as well. I couldn't see him as clearly. I woke up from the dream amazed and in a state of wonder. And as I pondered it in the coming days, I realized I had been given this gift to see something. That is how the intellect is able to see in what he's talking about here. Apart from the compound form, I was able to see Randy. And in the dream, when I was in his chest, I could still see his face. But I wasn't seeing his face the way you see it when you're outside someone's body. It was very amazing. The dream was completely shocking and amazing. And it affected me for a while afterwards. But it just gave me a realization that in the next iteration of this life, we are going to be able to see our loved ones and see people and see God through a pure intellectual vision. And that's what Thomas is talking about here. I'll read it again. Keep that in mind when I read it, and it might become more clarified. Our intellect cannot comprehend simple subsisting forms. I feel like I was able to see Randy's form. in the dream, as they really are in themselves, but it apprehends them as compound things in which there is something taken as subject and something as inherent. So that's when you see someone in the normal way we're used to seeing people, the way I saw Randy when I exited his chest. I then saw the compound forms, nose, eye, hair, and I couldn't see it as good. It was disappointing in the dream, and it was, I can't see him as well. It would be the same thing in this life as if you're talking to a friend on the computer screen and then it starts going staticky or something. You feel that sense of, oh man, the internet's not working. That's how I felt in the dream. Oh man, the internet of seeing my intellect is not seeing Randy as clearly. There is something that is taken as subject and something that is inherent. Therefore, it apprehends the simple form as a subject and attributes something else to it. All right, so I wonder if that's a lot for people. Tell me in the comments, what do you think about what I'm saying here? Again, this is the Daily Summa. We just do one page a day. So it's a quick flyover. We can't go deep. We could sit in this page and talk about this page for a whole college semester. And not even go into deep mystical teaching either, like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross. So there's a lot that the Lord has for a playground, what do you call those Six Flags? An amusement park of wonders awaiting us if we will just take our heads out of the internet, out of doom scrolling, and enter into blessed theology, the Sacra Doctrina. Okay, reply to objection 3. This proposition, the intellect understanding anything otherwise than it is false, can be taken in 2 senses. Accordingly, as this adverb otherwise determines the word understanding on the part of the thing understood or on the part of the one who understands. You can take something, and I've said this to you guys numerous times. What applies to theology and scriptures? The scriptures toggle back and forth between divine perspective and human perspective. Excuse me, and you have to get used to that, just like you have to get used to a clutch on a vehicle or playing guitar or playing an organ. You have to get used to scriptures toggling back and forth between divine and human perspective. We can also toggle back and forth from the perspective of my ideas and my intellect and the outside world and how I'm viewing it. That's why life is so complicated, guys. And there's no that's why you have to have wisdom. Wisdom sees a bigger picture. So many YouTube videos are trying to give you the answer. And because of the way we work, where we toggle back and forth from meta perspectives to a particular in the game perspective, and then even in the game, we toggle back and forth from my viewpoint to the reality out there. There's a lot of different ways that we go back and forth on it, and people get confused of that, and they ask questions from 2 or 3 perspectives at once and don't even realize they're moving back from different perspectives, and there's confusion. So you just have to get used to that. Okay, taken as referring to a thing understood, the proposition is true, and the meaning is any intellect thing is otherwise than it is false. But this does not hold in the present case, because our intellect, when forming a proposition about God, does not affirm that he is composite, but that he is simple. But taken as referring to the one who understands, this proposition is false. From our perspective, it's false. From the divine perspective, he is simple in one, and you can't talk about him in his essence. For the mode of the intellect in understanding is different from the mode of the thing in its essence. That's what he's just gone through great lengths to describe. The mode of Randy, my buddy, is different than my seeing of him and how I apprehend him. Is that cat back on the window? No. What is moving on the window? There's maybe some ghost behind me. Okay, since it is clear that our intellect understands material things below itself in an immaterial manner, not that it understands them to be immaterial things, but its manner of understanding is immaterial. Our intellect is spirit. That's why the materialist has such a difficult problem with the mind-body problem. Because how can that be? It's very difficult to understand until you understand that you are an intellect, a mind, a spirit. Spirit, mind, noetic, all that same. We are mind looking through matter, united to matter as one. Likewise, when it understands simple things above itself, it understands them according to its own mode, which is in a composite manner, yet not so as to understand them to be a composite thing. And thus our intellect is not false in forming composition in its ideas concerning God. Even though God is not a composition, he is simple. Our minds can think in a composite way as we're forming intellectual concepts about the subject. Okay, guys. If you're new to this and you don't understand it, we're on a beaver galleon sailing through the abyss, looking for land on a long journey here. And repetition is the mother of learning. As you go through this daily Summa, that's why we're doing it daily. As our brother Yaakov says regarding Gomorrah and the Daf Yomi, it's not about the Summa, it's about the daily. It's about the commitment, the study, show yourself approved. It's the being here and focusing your mind not on the things of this earth, but the things of heaven through the lens of St. Thomas, the springboard of St. Thomas. So if you're having trouble understanding these things, stick with it, guys. Things will become more and more clear as you continue to sail. And one day you will land on little islands of epiphany and grow in your understanding, take more supplies onto the ship, and one day the ship will land on either the return of Christ or in your blessed day of death into that final shore. So remember, St. Thomas said all this is straw, but straw can be used to set the wood on fire, as in this fireplace, and heat your house. By the way, the guy who owns this house, this is an amplifier. He calls this the amplifier place. Good one, Mike. All right, guys, this has been the Daily Summa. I'm going to check out.